Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in this fine world. Wish to welcome you to the very first episode of the Frame by Frame podcast, your podcast for all things UX and UI, but not just within the world, but also outside of it. So, I and my co hosts, we're going to be talking about plenty of topics, but first of all, we are mainly going to be discussing about such questions as what is UX design? What is UI design? How do I get into the industry? What kind of boot camp is appropriate for me? What do I think UX and UI mean? What do I expect to get from the boot camp? These are just some of the questions that we are going to be doing our best to answer based on our experiences. So let me introduce myself and then I'll introduce my co-hosts. So I'm Cross. I'm a fairly recent graduate of the UX immersion course by Career Foundry, and I am a UX designer currently looking for a job. So if anyone is out there, please see my LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Cross Preston. And I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Zach and Will. So please, guys, take it away. Introduce yourselves and let our audiences know more about you guys.
Who wants to go first? I can. Yeah, that's fine. My name's Zach, and I'm also a recent grad of the UX course at Career Foundry. Um, let's see. I spent a lot of time as a graphic designer, approximately 18 years, and I did UX a little bit freelance while I was actually learning the rules of UX and UI. Um, how is it? What did I think it was when I first signed up? Well, as a graphic designer, I was looking something more in the tech field to get into maybe web design, and that is not really what that is at all. But the more I learned about UX and the more I was reading and different books I was picking up, it made it very clear that UX design was designing everything around what you see. So what you see is just one aspect, but the UX was all the decisions that got you to that point. Um, and I think as far as a boot camp is a great opportunity. I only have experience with one, which was the Career Foundry boot camp. They did a great job as far as relaying all that information and making it learnable for people who need some kind of a system to learn a lot of information. But the thing is, I also know a lot of self-taught UX designers, and they're all capable. I think it's a little harder to break into the industry at that point, though. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think as a self-taught, you really have to just bank on freelance for a while.
Yeah, I understand that. That's how I started after my boot camp. And I guess with that said, I'll introduce myself. Hi, my name is William. I also did Career Foundry's User Experience Design Bootcamp. I finished up in December of 2022. The time of recording, it is September of 2023. So I've been in the market for a little while. Um, so just to give a little background on myself, I am relatively young considering most bootcamp grads. I'm 26. I picked up a degree in computer engineering in college, and I realized pretty quickly that that was not the way for me to go. I did not like it, it was far too boring. And then from there, I kind of struggled finding anything that was fulfilling and challenging and high enough of pay. I struggled with that for quite a few years after finishing up college in the US. And it took me until late 2021 to hear about UX design and kind of get an understanding for it. And the reason why I really fell into it was because it was the first career or industry that I found that really combined people work and technical work. And that combination was so very important to me because I know I have an aptitude for technology. And I know that if I really wanted to, I could go down a super duper techie route and be paid well. But I also have a proclivity for more people centric work. I came up through the Boy Scouts of America program, which I loved. I was an RA in college, which I really enjoyed doing. For those who aren't familiar, it's a resident assistant role. You create a bunch of events for the people who live on campus, stuff like that. And I just really struggled finding a combination of sort of a people centric role and the tech role until I found and heard about UX design. So I started following that. And that's really all it was for me throughout my boot camp, which was just, hey, this is the best combo of these two interests of mine.
I think that's also where I fell in is the more I learned about the role, it's where I feel like I belonged as a designer. I don't know, is that to you the same kind of experience where it's like you could be doing this other thing, but the the role of the user actually gains the importance there, and to me that brought a different aspect of it, I think, of the whole role. Like instead of just being a designer or being in tech, you actually get to work around the people using it and deal with problems in a way that, yeah, you can design graphics all day, but
Yeah, at the time of making the decision to attend the boot camp, or even by the time I graduated, that still hadn't occurred to me. It was when I first started to get some real world experience that that really came into play, and then I started really understanding that. And that made it all the more worthwhile and meaningful for me. Because again, this was really the people centric part of it. And after graduating, I started to become a big member in the career changer space and the bootcamp grad space on LinkedIn. And I started to realize how much I liked that community and how much I want to do work that benefits that community. The group of people who are deciding to do something positive with their lives are willing to take on a bit of uncertainty to improve their futures and improve their lives and potentially their families as well. And so it was really once I started getting work done that I realized just how good of a combo it was. I always knew it was a combo of my interests going into it, but it's only now that I'm realizing just how strong of a combo it is for me.
see, do you wish you would have found that before attending college?
If I found this before attending college, I either A, would have not attended college because there is really no such thing as a bachelor's in UX design, or I would have gone deep into either a bachelor's degree for digital design or maybe like behavioral economics or something to really understand users better. But at this period of my life over the last 2 years, I've really understood how much I can learn and develop on my own when I'm not beholden to a class structure. And so maybe 4 years alone with my computer would have gotten me farther than I am now with that computer engineering degree.
I think that's a really
But I wouldn't
common
know.
trait in UX, though, is the eagerness to teach yourself, to learn more. And I feel like if you lose that or don't possess that, maybe it's not as interesting. I can't really say because I have stacks and stacks of books and I'm constantly reading anything I want information on.
Yeah, I'm pretty much when it comes to graphics, I'm pretty much self-taught on all that stuff. I mean, I've been using Photoshop for probably about 21, 22 plus something years. And I think like with anything, like if, like people who learn languages or anything, I think there are pros and cons, just like there is in UX design. Yes, it can be good where you get the freedom, but if you don't have a structure or you don't have someone who knows their stuff, you might be making mistakes or learning the wrong stuff. Well, not the wrong stuff. There's no such thing as the wrong stuff, but just knowledge that probably isn't going to be particularly useful in the beginning, or it's very niche, and not having anyone to be able to correct you or to point you in the right direction, it can actually set you back, I find. But yes, I used Photoshop, like I said, 20 plus something years ago, and I learned web design myself as a teenager. I actually also come from a design background. And just for all of you listeners out there, even though you'll come across many people who come from a graphics, product, or web design background, and it does help. It does not mean that it's impossible or even difficult for you to be a UX or a UI designer. You don't need to have a graphic product or web design background. It's just very helpful. And for a lot of people who do, like the three of us do, and a lot of our colleagues in this industry, it's something that is another field, but overlaps with a lot of the things that we've learnt. And so, like I said, I come from a web and graphics design background, but that was as a teenager. Although I did have my own business, it was nice getting the extra pocket money. But yeah, we just want to definitely make that point that you don't need to have any prior graphics, web, or product design experience. And that's what, and boot camps teach you everything. They teach you the fundamentals. You don't need to be a Picasso or anything like that. You only just have to um, I would say for me personally, I've always been a creative guy. Again, like my co-hosts. So I'm used to drawing, painting, and professionally, I come from a background in customer services, training, leadership, management, that kind of stuff. So when it comes to the user experience design, my customer service background did help a lot because I was already developed the skills to be able to really put the customer, or in this case, the user first. So if you come from a customer service background, that is very helpful. Or if you come from any background, particularly where you're dealing with a lot of people, especially when you've got different cultures, different ages, it's a real boot camp in itself because you learn a whole amount of psychology, which is also plays a key role in UX design. In fact, a lot of industries or fields, marketing, psychology, design, sketching, proofreading, everything is all they can all be found in UX design, and it's one of the reasons why I like UX design because it's just so varied. I don't know. I think it might be similar for you guys, Zach and Will. What do you think about that? How it incorporates many
See,
different
the UX
disciplines.
field is so vast, there's no one avenue you can take, and that's something that, I mean, you're aware
Yeah,
of it, but even now in my role at my company, I'm involved in so many aspects of the UX process that I'm finding things that I didn't know that I liked so much before, or things that really interest me now, like design systems. I'm a huge design systems nerd. I could play with design systems all day and develop tokens for Figma and organize why things are the way they are and what the rules are and make sure that onboarding new designers goes easy. To me, that's at the moment probably one of my favorite things I have to do. Um, and that's again, that's just one tiny corner of this huge field, and I think that's something that boot camps they try to get that point across, but there's you don't see it. Like it's so big, you just don't see it. So I don't, yeah, I
yeah,
don't think you
yeah.
have to be a designer.
Yeah, I,
You
I
can
think
be
that's
a
true.
computer scientist and get involved in research. You can get involved in all sorts of I don't want to call them mini jobs, but just these tiny little niches in the UX community. And once, I think a lot, something for the newer people or people just getting into it, that's something you won't realize until you get a real world hands on experience is, oh, I never had experience with that before. And this is way more fun than something else I was interested in. Or maybe you know you have your focus and you stick to it, and somewhere down the line somebody has you do something that you're not it wasn't your thing, and now all of a sudden you found I call it little pockets of joy. Like there's something I find in a job that I normally didn't see myself doing, and I actually like doing it now.
Yeah, I think there's something for everyone in UX and UI design.
Absolutely. I almost find it similar to being like a scientist, with how there are a million different kinds of science. You could be working with actual glass tubes and chemicals and stuff in a lab. You could be working with gravity and light You could be peering through a telescope, or even like psychological or behavioral scientists. UX can exist in really any industry. It can really exist in any capacity. And really, all it is just a set of methodologies that you could employ in any work environment. Because for my understanding of UX, I think it's just a fancy way of saying, oh, I use the scientific method of just hypothesis, research, experiment, analyze, repeat.
Yeah.
'Cause that's really all we do. But I think UX is more of the how do I use the scientific method when it comes to creating products sort of thing. I think it's a fancy wrapper around the scientific process that's used in like the product creation world.
So here's something fun. I don't know how often you guys have thought about this. When I first got into UX and I learned what we were doing for digital products, Disney has been doing for real world products for God knows how long, and I I don't know why nobody promotes the real world market, or you don't hear more about it, like designing waiting systems, how your store functions when people have to wait in line, or how you check out an actual checkout and not a digital checkout.
Yeah, I know Disney invented that a system of distracting people who are in queues for their resorts. Yeah, it was a pretty nifty system. But actually, I think that what we call UX design, or what we call the scientific approach, I think it's actually been around since, man's been on the planet. I mean, even designing a wheel, I mean, you take a caveman who, sort of designed that spherical object. It was a case of, oh, this moves. You don't have to push it. You push it initially, and then it rolls off with momentum. And then, so I think every era, I mean, even building the pyramids, that would have taken some idea and planning and thought into it. So I would say user experience and even UI, user interface design, has been around since as long as man has. It's just that obviously nowadays, it's sort of become at the pinnacle of its own legacy, as I call it, because it's just so, or it's becoming so prevalent that it's really something that is just essential.
So where
Absolutely.
wh- another question is, I see a huge shift in the market right now. People that were so-called UX UI designers are now transferring to product design and development. And my question is,
Yeah,
where is that line in the sand between both? And just in case people listening, maybe they are here for the UX UI and they're thinking about product design or product management. Like where do you draw the line between the two? Because I know currently in my role I'm doing a mix of both. Like you're somewhere between project manager, product developer and designer, and a UX UI designer. Like your role is really, I don't want to say vague, but you do have to cover quite a few areas, especially in startup sized companies where you might be the only designer. You might be one of two designers.
I think that's a really tricky one. Well, first, of course, it comes down to the company and their naming structure. Um, of course, a product designer at one company could be doing the same thing as a UX designer at a different one. But the way I've heard it from like different career coaches and stuff the most, and this may be right, this may be wrong, is that product designers are usually a little bit more seasoned and that they do more using agile workplace methodologies than UX people do. I'm sure that's probably true for some organizations, maybe some big ones, but I'm sure it's not the same for all. For example, my real world experience, I didn't even have a title. I was just helping out a startup. It was just, hey, we got to get this product on the ground and running, and hopefully get a a profit one day. I didn't have a title. It was just do what needed to be done and use my UX training while I did it. So, of course, there are massive differences between the big companies and the startups.
Did you feel that was a very sink or swim situation to be in? Like, here's the knowledge you have. Please
Um,
use it and do everything we ask you to do.
my experience was kind of unique. I wasn't paid. This was a volunteer position, and I worked full time to pay rent as I did this, not in the design world. So this was more of a, hey, we appreciate your help. Anything you can do in any given week, we appreciate. So the pressure really was off, but I was working, or I am working, for a startup called Prentice, which is a product for job seekers to try to help keep them on track, try to help keep them motivated in their career changes, which is a product that is directly benefiting the group of people that I'm interested in helping. So I already had the individual meaning and purpose to go work on the product. Um, so the pressure was on, but it was on from me, not from the company itself.
I will say that something that so far has not changed in my UX journey is even when there is pressure from work, I find I am putting more pressure on myself because
Yeah.
I know I'm capable and I don't want to disappoint even myself. And I can't be the only UX designer because I see it commonly posted from other colleagues and stuff is that you go to bed and lay awake at night wondering if that decision you put into the prototype was the right decision. And the only thing you can do is
Yeah.
wait to hear back, but you're still stuck at night with those thoughts.
Wow.
Mm. Well, just a
Yeah.
question. You said the company's name is
Correct.
Prentice, right? Yeah. Do they refer to their employees as apprentices?
No, I don't really think the employees have titles. They're still very, very, very early in their startup world. From what I understand, the CEO just got his first paycheck after working on it for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So yeah,
Oh,
very early.
okay. So you guys aren't referred to as apprentices, are
Now,
you?
that
No?
would have made a lot of sense for me since it was a volunteer position. I was still learning a lot.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. I just asked because I know some companies refer to their employees based on their name, and I thought, oh, that's a good
that
play
would be
on
fun.
word,
Yeah.
apprentice, apprentice. That would be fun. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't say, I mean, at the moment, I can't really say that, not because I disagree, but I can't really say I share the same thing because, I've mainly been working on, private projects or, on LinkedIn, been giving feedback to people who post there designs and what have you. And I enjoy it, not enjoy it as in a sadistic way, of course, but I enjoy it as in, you know, that sharing knowledge, giving and taking, getting people to give feedback on mine. And actually, this is what our podcast is about, giving and taking. Um, so just to broach the topic, the main theme actually of this episode, because it relates a lot to what we've already been discussing, is first of all the start of it. So getting into the UX design. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we're all graduates of a boot camp. But for those of you who have heard of UX design, who have heard of UI design, maybe you have a little bit of an idea, maybe you have a huge idea about it. But for this episode, what we want to give you guys and girls and everyone basically, we want to just give you how we felt and what our experiences were before we actually, well, not even just started the course, but deciding which boot camp to go, and also the avenues of how to join a boot camp, because there are generally just two ways. You either pay for them out of your own pocket, them being the courses, or I don't know what it's like in other countries, but here in Germany, you can actually get what is called a Bildungsgutschein or a training voucher. And that is where you get paid, or rather, the job center pays for you to do the course. You don't have to pay them back, but with Career Foundry, if you pay for it yourself, they do have a job guarantee. Now, this doesn't mean that you graduate from the course and you're instantly getting a job, which is a part of the main topic we're actually going to be talking about. But you will, um, but should you go onto the Career Foundry and within 6 months, obviously terms and conditions apply, you can actually get your full you can get a full refund for that. But that aside, outside of Career Foundries, what they offer, we just want to broach the subject of boot camps in general. And we will try to answer such questions as, are they worth it? What will I really learn? What will I be prepared for? Is it all theory or will I do any practical projects? So these are the kinds of questions we will be answering. So I think if my co-hosts agree, I think we can probably start off with our own experiences. So I'll detail mine. So as I said in my intro, I come from a customer service training, leadership, development, and management background. And I had a number of roles in various companies, from the hospitality industry to the customer service industry to social media, content moderation. But I always knew that I wanted a career that was fulfilling, that something where I could actually really have my creative talents harnessed, because I've always been a creative person. I'm a musician. I've painted, I've drawn, I've sketched. I use Photoshop a lot and Figma, of course. But I really knew I needed to do something. I had overcome a lot of personal obstacles in life, so I was really ready. And I didn't. I knew what UX design was, but on a layman's level, if someone had asked me, I'd say, well, yeah, it's just to do with how a customer or user experiences. And it is indeed that, but there's so much more to learn about it. So I looked up different boot camps, and like with anything, as is common sense, you look up the reviews of each boot camp, you weigh up the pros and cons, you go with what you think is a good choice, and I did. And I got in touch with the Career Foundry team, the initial contact team. They were very, very helpful, very supportive. And there was a smooth transition from leaving one job and being unemployed to being unemployed and learning a trade. And I will say that my expectations were, okay, this is UX design. And actually, I thought there would be more, it would revolve more around what we call the user interface, that there would be more graphics. I didn't really expect that there would be a huge amount of research and even research methods, A and B testing, rapid card testing, and all the others. And then obviously doing the prototypes, having focus groups. So actually, there were quite a few differences in what I thought it was to my first experiences after I had embarked upon the course. But I think it's also good for you guys to also get the experiences so far up until probably I would say when we've just started doing the course, to get the experiences of Zach and Will. So I know they're more than eager to share what they think. So yeah, please go ahead.
Well, if Will wants to go, he's more than welcome. Otherwise, I can take over.
Well, if Will is willing, you can put the will in willing, Will.
Let's see. With bootcamp stuff, I think this one's tricky. A lot of it comes down to, of course, your own research and your own budget. Of course, the budget being some kind of the most restrictive part. When I was researching, I really only found two. I found General Assembly and Career Foundry. I had heard of Google's like small courses, but for some reason that kind of just was a turnoff for me. I ended up speaking with representatives of both General Assembly and Career Foundry ended up just being the one for me, in part because budget, but I liked the fact they offered the job guarantee and others, and just the rest of their course structure seemed nice. I like that they gave the mentor and the tutor, which was really beneficial for my education in the program. and it felt like such a huge decision at the time. It felt like I was almost making another college university decision. But it's funny, once you're out, it doesn't matter anymore. You meet designers from all different boot camps or all different backgrounds, and it just doesn't matter anymore. The the decision that you had to make years prior just felt like almost a flip of the coin once you're out of it for so long. Um, it's kind of unique. All the
Yeah.
designers that I've met from different boot camps, they seem to share a similar experience.
Yeah, Will, just wanted to ask you a question on that because, as you mentioned, with Career Foundry, we have a mentor
Yeah.
and a tutor, and like you, I found that to be pretty effective because if you're in a company and you're in a team, you'll have the project manager, which I think is, I would say, is the
Hmm.
mentor. Then you have the lead UX designer, which I would say is the tutor, and then you have the junior or UX designer, which is obviously the student. Would you say that is a very relevant analogy to I mean, Zach can probably also, well, Zach can answer this question because he's working. But do you guys find that it can very much relate to giving you an experience of what it would be like to work in that creative hierarchy of a UX project manager, senior UX lead, and then UX designer or junior UX designer?
So the hard part with that is with work experience now, the way it's set up there, your your material for class is given to you. Technically, then that would be your stakeholder, and you would get approval from like your tutor, who is would then be your head or your lead for that department. And then I think your mentor in that sense, they're more on the outside. They're kind of just making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I guess I'd give them a consultant role at that point. Um,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
they're kind of just checking your stuff and they want to see it and make sure you to make sure you're understanding, and your tutor is just making sure you're getting the work done and doing it the right way and properly, and making sure you're understanding the concepts. And yeah, I think it's really weird. It's so hard to explain because I think there is a big misunderstanding with boot camps where they're teaching it in a linear process, which it is not at all. Like when I started in my current role, that
No, definitely
it
not.
had nothing to do with anything I learned in boot camp when I started at my current role. It turned you upside down because they had some research there. Was it a lot? No, I've been pushing for a lot more. Um, but they had some kind of system in place, and you're kind of just thrown in the middle of it as a noob, and you're like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, what is we're not following this order. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the misconception a lot of boot camp
Yeah.
students get is like, okay, we always have discovery, we always have our iteration process, we always have the prototyping, the testing, the iteration, and then we hand off. And it's like, well, no, you might not even test something. If it follows the design, it looks good, and it gets the okay, and it makes enough sense, it'll go straight to testing, or it'll just get handed off for a beta test.
Yeah, yeah, it's not linear in the sense of what you learn, but it's not linear in necessarily as in that is the exact process you're
No,
going
all
to
those,
be
yeah, all
fulfilling a
the
role for a company. But it's like with music though, I mean I remember the first time I played live with a group, on bass, and you can play along to your favorite songs, whether you learn by ear, you read or anything, and then like you think, okay, yeah, I've got this. And then you play with a band live and you think you're prepared, and then you actually find out that I don't know, one of the other musicians is skipping the chord, or someone's out of time or you're out of time. And I think it can be a lot like that. It can be pretty daunting in the beginning. I mean, listening to you, Zach, what you've said and the conversations we've had before is the for any boot camp, the syllabus is not does not necessarily reflect, and I'm not saying this in a
No,
critical way or
it's
anything.
not
It's just
negative,
that
but I
in the real world, I say the real world, I mean in an actual job, like you said, you might not need to do the A/B testing. You might not need to get lots of user journeys. The research could have already been done, and you just need to design some wireframes based on it.
yeah, and I think I I almost wish the boot camp could get you ready for that, but they can't. So their job, which is why this is not a negative comment to the boot camps, it's more they're teaching you the process. They're teaching you the methods to use. They're teaching you the best way to get something done and in some fashion of
Yeah,
organized process. But I mean, unless you're at a company from day one, you're never going to hit that start process. Like you're always going to come into a company and be somewhere in the middle, and you're just going to have to adjust. And I think that's one big thing uh, boot campers graduating or just starting have to be prepared for is that it's exciting when you get a job interview or you get a job offer and you go to that job. Just know your onboarding week, your first week there, is literally going to be feeling like you've been turned on your head and maybe you don't know anything. That's the first feeling you get.
yeah,
So,
yeah, and I think it's also as well, just to add to that, Zach, I think is even if you're getting another job in the field, like a couple of the jobs, the trainer jobs I had, when you join a new company, it might even be a different area, but they also have their own ways of doing things. So even if you have the experience, not just theory, but theory and experience, or just experience, it can still feel like that as well. That you think, oh, okay, this is a little bit different to how I was training, or the content needs to be delivered in a different way, that kind of thing. So I think it's always a case of whichever company you join. Like if I were a UX designer and I'm going from one design company to another, sure, I'll have the experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to just fit in right away. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I would say on it. Actually, just I mean, you've said it well and succinctly, anyways. That, but I really do agree with that. I think it's not just the theory side. It's also, like I said, if you have experience, it can still be daunting when you go into a new company because they may do
oh
things
yeah,
differently.
I think every company is going to function differently. It just depends on who's running your team at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why we have different management methods. We have different ways of delivering. We have different, they all have different definitions of what a good KPI is, for example. Or, the stakeholders may have different views to another company's
Yeah, and I don't
stakeholders.
know. I can't recall if it was said at all during the boot camp, but I definitely would tell anybody who's still in a boot camp or thinking about a boot camp, don't stop at UX. Try to get your feet wet in development because your developers will become your best friend. I think I'm on the phone with our lead developer 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, just so that all of you who are listening to this, you don't because I have come across where some people think that UX design involves programming. It doesn't. You don't need to know how to build a website with HTML, C++, JavaScript, or you don't need to know Python or the React program, but it is good to get a bit of information about it so that you can get more on the programmer's level. So even though you won't be able to necessarily program, you'll be able to, I would say, develop yourself to understand the limitations that developers have and the things that they can do, because then you really get to mesh and you get overall, I think, a better
See, and it's
product.
important to never be afraid of asking dumb questions because I've probably asked a million dumb
Yeah,
questions in my life, but I've always made it a point if I don't understand something, I'm going to ask. And if I still don't understand it, I'm going to ask. Maybe in a different way, but I'm going to ask. And I've noticed my
Yeah,
lead developer and
definitely.
I have a great relationship because he knows he can explain something to me, and if I don't understand, he's going to get another call or a message from me, and it's going to be questions that are a bit more informed than they would have been if he hadn't explained something to me in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I used to say to all of the trainees I had when I was giving um, the training sessions, I would always say at the start something such as, please, if you have any questions, no matter how dumb you may think they may be, there's no such thing as a dumb or stupid question here. I'd rather you ask a question, even if it's obvious, and you understand so you're able to make fewer mistakes than to suffer in silence and try to tough it through. Because in the end, actually, and I also say this from experience, that if you just try to tough something out because you don't want to lose what you perceive as face, or you might have a bit of pride, it actually really sets
You'll
you back. Well,
you'll
it
do
holds you
yourself a
back.
disservice and actually do some damage as well. So
Exactly. And you'll also not be as effective in doing the job because you don't have the understanding. Um, so even outside of UX, you know, if you're thinking of joining a boot camp, if you've got a million questions, ask the customer service team for the boot camp or the enrollment team. They would also tell you there's no such thing as a stupid question, even if the information's on the website. You know, perhaps you need it explained in another way. Perhaps you need extra clarity. There's no such thing as a dumb question at all. I don't
no, and
think,
even
anyway.
before I did the boot camp, I was doing freelance graphic design here in Germany, and our the company that I was doing freelance for, they were getting more and more into web design, and they're like, "Oh, you're interested in UX? Okay, see what you can find out and try to make some adjustments. That's on you, though. You're not our official UX designer, but it would help." And then that's when I really started getting into it. But because I hadn't started a course, and that's when I was just researching courses, um, I actually found it really helpful to get on LinkedIn and just start asking. I didn't care who, if they were UX and they were posting information, I was happily asking questions. I would it's so easy to send a message, and the worst thing that can happen is they don't answer you. I've never met a
Yeah, yeah.
I've
We're not.
never met a designer ever in the UX field. I shouldn't say graphic design because that's a different beast, but I've never met a UX designer so
Yeah,
far who was rude or made you feel little for asking questions and just wanting information. Most of them will help you out, or they'll say, I really don't know, or I don't have time, or maybe you just never get an answer back. And sometimes I understand way better now because we're just busy. There's 80% of my day that I don't even look at my cell phone because I have my head buried in research, or I have my head buried in Figma, or I'm talking in meetings and trying to get stakeholders on board with an idea. Like there's yeah, I wouldn't take it personally when somebody doesn't answer you, but it never hurts to reach out in a DM on LinkedIn.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I mean, we're all subscribed to a lot of UX, UI relevant pages and groups, and you know, if we, you know, we've got colleagues who are graduating all the time. And sometimes I don't see that they've graduated until maybe 2 weeks after, just because of the sheer amount of notifications we get. But as you said, it doesn't mean that we don't care or we're not interested. It's just that we don't see it. And I can imagine that developers or anyone in a role is going to get bombarded with questions. It's perfectly
And
normal.
I think in UX design, maybe it's just in most of the designer's nature, but you're looking out for other people. They're people, and you want to respond, and you want to help, and you want to make life easier for other people. So when I have never had a problem answering questions if I have time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You have to move things along. Again, I mean, I can only relate to when I was a trainer. You know, it's not that any of their questions were dumb or irrelevant, but if you've got people asking lots of questions about the same thing, I mean, it was different because we had the training groups weren't just one on one. There was like one on six, one on 10, one on 15. So of course you can get the answers, even if you don't ask a question, you might have had that question in mind. So yeah, you do have to move things on. If someone's asking the same question, you have to kind of think, well, is our progress being hindered here?
Yeah, so I think new UX designers who are just getting into a boot camp or into some sort of course or even self educating, uh, the the best service you can do for yourself is to ask a designer. Just find one and ask. I think the first guy I ever asked a question to, I
Yeah,
was still just dipping my toes in UX design after finding out what it was, and then um, that company that I was doing graphic design for had asked, "Hey, you're interested in it? Can you maybe test some out on some of these websites?" The first guy I asked, I had no idea who he was. I ran across him on LinkedIn. I checked out his portfolio, and I saw he worked for a company where I knew another person on LinkedIn, and I was like, I'm just gonna ask this guy, and I was like, hey, can you like give me some pointers, like take a look at what I've designed, and he was super helpful, and he's like, anytime you need anything, just reach out. If I have a minute, I'll get back to you, and you know you just can't be scared of that because that's going to get you further in your journey getting into UX or even continuing in UX. Just ask questions, ask everybody.
Absolutely. And getting into that habit of asking questions can also really benefit you when it comes to doing your research. When I was kind of early in my UX process, and when I had to start recruiting interview participants for my projects with Career Foundry, I had a lot of not anxiety or stress about it, but like I was kind of nervous to do it. I didn't want to ask people for their time and stuff like that. But now, after spending a lot of time just asking people any sort of questions, or even just asking people to connect with me on LinkedIn, I've realized I'm way more comfortable asking people to even spare 20 minutes for a super short usability test on something I'm working on. Even if I find like a user of my product on LinkedIn, I'll just reach out to them like, hey, I'm one of the designers on this product you use. I was just wondering if you have 20 minutes to spare over the next week or two, something like that.
And
That's all right.
how open do you find these people to be responsive to your questions? Most of them are, aren't they?
I've never received a no, whether
Yeah,
it was
it's
a,
crazy.
a connection request or asking for advice over Zoom for half an hour or like an interview participant. I've never heard a no. Maybe it was maybe the most negative things I've heard have been like, hey, I'm really busy this week. Can I get back to you next week? And then maybe I don't hear back. But whatever, that's fine.
Yeah,
Your
you
chances
never
are you're
get.
reaching out to multiple people anyway.
Yeah, and you never really get somebody who's just like, go away. I,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, not when it's especially not when it's sending requests via email. Although having said that, I don't know if I'd want to do user research standing on the street with a stall, approaching people, because I know that when I've been coming back from the station and I walk one of the main routes, and you get people coming up to you, and especially if you've had a hard day at work, you just think, no, no, not interested. But having said that, that's in person though. But like you, Will, I never had anyone come back to me saying, no, I don't want to do it, or coming across as brusque or rude. But I found that with your user research, that the inherent nature of it is it's unreliable because, and I'm not being accusatory there, but it is unreliable in the sense of, people are too busy or something comes up and they forget. I mean, I can remember one assignment actually where I was waiting a whole week for people to get back to me, and I thought, if I've got a deadline, I appreciate people have lives, but it was only something where I would have needed only say 10 minutes of their time,
Well, it's funny that
you
doesn't
know.
yeah.
But I wouldn't say that was a bad experience, like as in, oh no, I'm not doing it. Oh no, go away. No, I never had that
Well,
experience
if
either.
anybody listening is getting into more the straight up research side of things, they should be aware that doesn't change. It never changes. It doesn't matter if it's for a project or a company or it. People are so weird. I've been waiting on follow up emails.
Yeah, that
Follow
is
up
true.
emails. So I did a whole round of interviews for our product with our target audience, and all these people were super excited about the product. And I was like, hey, would you be interested in like a weekly journal where every day for the next 5 days you get an email? You just got to respond to three questions. One is the date. One is I won't dig into what we're doing, but give me some information about your current role in your job and what was the most difficult part about what you had to do today, because our product is supposed to help these people. And I think out of the
Yeah.
5 or 6 people that I did the emails, I got two back. I got two full 5 days. The rest was like one answered for 2 days, one answered one time, and then just a no go for the last people. And you can't let it. You can't.
It's
Yeah, you
always the
can't let it get
case.
you
It's
down. And if
always the
people
case.
from Career Foundry or any other boot camp are in Slack asking their colleagues to try to get some feedback, you're gonna
Oh,
you're gonna get the same thing in a
yeah.
role at a company somewhere. It's gonna happen with users because some just don't want to. Some feel bothered by it, even though they agreed to it. I mean, I'm like that with making personal plans. I'll tell you I'll come to a party, and then like the day of, I'll call you and be like, yeah, I just don't feel like it. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's it. I think every single person who's ever graduated from a career foundry or a boot camp has had it. I mean, I had it as well. I posted on the forums because, as you know, in Slack there are about four channels, but the only main one that's used is just the general one. But of course, if you post something such as, which people still do actually, I haven't checked Slack for a while,
they don't. I think
to
they
be
delete
honest,
it,
but
don't
I
they?
know people still. Yeah, they delete it and say you need to post in the other channel, which I agree with. But the
Nobody
problem
responds.
is, the other channels, either nobody responds, and then I posted on the forums, on the Career Foundry forums. I didn't even get a response, so I had to improvise with that exercise. Otherwise, I would have fallen behind.
Yeah, you know what? You actually reached out to me for for feedback on one of your designs, and at the time I was
That is
working full
true.
time and stuff, and it took
That is
me
true.
I think about a week to get back to you. And I know that you were doing the program full time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha. So
full
you were
time.
able
Yeah,
to move much faster than anyone who's doing it part time. And so by the time I got back to you, you were certainly on to the next thing. So yeah, I totally understand how you had to improvise.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's not a case of, well, okay, I'm getting frustrated. It's a case of, well, it's okay. I still have to meet the deadlines. If like I was saying, if you get back to me after I've done the task, it's still okay. But yeah, I remember actually. Yeah, I reached out to you on LinkedIn asking you to help me with one of the exercises. I think it was actually in achievement three.
Awesome.
But but mind you, that wasn't so bad in terms of being able to get feedback because it's not as extensive. But exercise or achievement
Yep.
510 in the Career Foundry, that's the one where people really struggle to get
I think some of
feedback
the
Absolutely.
on.
students just get burnt out too. Like they have their own stuff going on, and maybe they just don't want to take the time. I don't know, or I think some people just are they're going through the same struggle you are, so maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't. it's
Yeah,
it's hit or
definitely.
miss. But I will say that anybody going into any boot camp, I'm sure they I don't know if they're all run the same, but I'm gonna assume that they all have some kind of like feedback thing with other boot camp students. Do it. Help anybody you can, and always be the one offering help, because it has come back tenfold for me. I got asked to do a bunch of projects on the side. I'm still actually working with quite a few Career Foundry people on side projects, and they've graduated. They're just doing them to do them. And at the moment, if I'm not actually working my UX job, I'm here doing UX UI on my computer at night instead of watching Netflix because it's more productive. But I'm working with students that went to Career Foundry. We have great relationships, and they are people
Awesome.
that I would recommend for jobs. Like because I've worked with them, I know them, I could vouch for them at that point. So it's definitely, yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
definitely.
beneficial to put yourself out there and be like, hey, I'll give you feedback. Can you? And mostly the people you're giving feedback to, they'll trade. I think most people are like that. It's like, hey, you need and I need. Let's do this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's just sort of, well, I won't say common courtesy as in it's not common courtesy. It is, but it's just sort of the standard, the subconscious
Scratch
standard.
my
It's like,
back.
hey
Yeah.
everyone,
Mhm.
I've got a, yeah, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Please leave feedback on this, and I'll be more than happy to leave feedback on yours. But it is nice. I mean, I can't say I'm working with any current enrolled students with Career Foundry, but I do tend to post a lot on LinkedIn, and I'm always very keen to give feedback on people's designs. So based on what I've learned from Career Foundry and also my own experiences in graphics and web design, I'm always very eager to help people with their designs, such as, well, I don't really recommend white text on yellow because it's not user friendly. So use a dark color, or at least if you're going to do that, add a stroke to the text so it stands out, so people's eyes aren't having to work extra hard to do something which is going to come across as having to decipher rather than scan. So I think it's always important. But the thing is, I had one or two people ask me on Slack, but the problem was with one person who asked me to help, and I was more than happy to, but I didn't
Oh,
get
I
the
had the same
notification.
problem.
So I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't have the message. It was only by chance when I checked on Slack, and someone had messaged me 4 days prior to my checking, and I thought, oh, sorry. So I messaged them back. I asked, hey, do you still need me to give feedback? But they had already got the feedback they needed. I mean, I wouldn't say I feel bad as in, because I couldn't do anything about it. I just didn't get the notification from Slack that someone had messaged me. Otherwise, I'd have been straight in there to help
Mhm.
them. Um, but yeah, I think it's always important to always help people, when they're new. And that's what I like about the impetus for us doing this podcast is, we can actually relate to people who are thinking or are doing a boot camp.
Well, I'll already offer my assistance if any boot campers are listening. You just gotta locate me on LinkedIn because I'd never check my Slack anymore.
I
Same.
don't. It's on my phone, but I don't check it. Yeah. Yeah, I never check Slack now. I mean, I only just opened it because we mentioned it, but no messages or anything, nothing really new in the channel.
No, but it's really beneficial. I found for later if you're just communicating with other people in your boot camp because you never know. I mean, they say you meet somebody twice in your life, so it could be somebody later that's like, oh man, I did a project with him or he gave me some feedback and I need help with this. Let's see if they're able to help because they helped before, and then you never know. You might meet them again, and they have a great offer for you that you didn't expect, or even if it's just a side project, it could turn into potentially something later.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one tip I would give to anyone out there who has just graduated, is doing the course, or graduated a couple of months ago, is just build your portfolio, gain the experience, don't necessarily expect to get
Mhm.
paid for it, but contribute, give feedback on other people's projects, and then you'll probably get a hat tip, so to speak. And it's just, you don't really need to spend anything to get experience. Just help out where you can. Just build your portfolio, not just your own project portfolio, but a portfolio of experience. As in, for example, I will say if it's in any interview or if I'm talking about myself, I'll say, yeah, I'm very active on the UX or UI groups and pages on LinkedIn because I'm very keen to give my ideas to learn from other people and take their ideas. So always be willing to just get involved in UX, UI, and also do it. I think it's important to have a passion, like with anything. I mean, for me, as I said earlier, I've always been into the creative arts, and I have a real passion for this kind of stuff, and that's why actually I like UX design. And sure, my expectations going into it are different from my experiences coming out of the boot camp, but actually, going through the boot camp, I have even more of a passion for it because I fully understand it. And I can do things where I can work with people. I'm sure it's the same for all of us out there in the field, um, where you can actually, it's nice knowing that that you'll possibly make a positive change in someone's life by making it easier, by designing an app and being part of that process and opening the creative envelope, so to speak, in order to come to create a really good product.
Well, even
Um, I mean, is that something you guys would even say as well, to an
yeah, and even
extent,
in the
at least?
situation of the reason we're doing this podcast, or the reason I'm always open to give feedback or help somebody on a project, send me a Figma link. Let's do this. Show me your design system. Let's go. Because you you gain experience working with people. You're helping somebody out, and later it might come back. Just they might get a job because of a project you worked on together. What better help could you be for somebody? You know.
Right, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, yeah. Sorry, Will. Sorry, Will.
I was just agreeing.
Yeah, but also Zach said, by all means, if you're working on a project, send me the Figma link. Look me up on LinkedIn. Feel free to also connect with me. Send me a request. Send me a message. Say asking if you need feedback. Just type in Cross Preston. I'm the only one on there. I'd be very surprised if there was anyone else who also had that name, to be honest. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to me, connect with me, send me a message. And I'm also very happy and eager to help anyone out there with their designs and the creative process. And actually, this is but even if you don't reach out, hopefully from this podcast, from the episodes we will be doing, all of the topics we will be talking about on this podcast, we really hope that you will definitely get something out of it, because we know how hard it is. We're going through it now, actually, especially Will and I. We are going through it now where it's tough. We are looking for jobs. We are trying to break into the market, but we really want to also help others to get into the market. So this isn't just an information podcast. This is also a support podcast so that we can share our experiences and that we can have all of you listen at once. So you know that you're not alone because the job rejections, for example, that we've all gone through, we're all going through really takes its toll on you. Never underestimate how a simple rejection can impact you because it's
It's
not just the one. It's
200.
when you get one and then two and three and
Yeah.
200. Yeah. And also regarding the job rejections as well. I mean, personally, I think that it should be sort of the old fashioned way of if you don't, thank you very much for your application. Unfortunately, you've not been successful on this occasion, but if you feel that there are other jobs that you feel suitable for, please contact us again in the future because I find modern rejection emails very patronizing. I mean, you guys must have received them as well, saying, "Oh, you have qualifications and skills, but we've gone with someone who has more experience in the field." But yeah, don't ever underestimate the impact that they can have on you. And keep trying. You will, even if you're really qualified, you will get rejections. But again, as I was saying with the podcast, we really hope that this podcast, if nothing else, that at least you won't feel alone in feeling dejected because you're not getting anywhere. If you're like me, you're on the unemployment benefit first tier, or you're on your respective social welfare system or social support system. I understand the pressure. There is a deadline, but you've just got to really hang in there, be persistent, and realize that someone will look at your profile and someone will not just be going about years of experience. Because I also think it's important that, when hiring someone, I also think that it's not just what they can do, it's also how they're going to fit in, which I think is really important. Personally, that's just my opinion. I mean, what about you guys, Zach and Will? I mean, what's your whole take on this subject? And for people who are listening to this podcast and they're going through this exact thing, like they're recent graduates and they've got skills, they've got language skills, but they just can't seem to get their foot in the door. What kind of advice or thoughts would you say on that?
You definitely need
Um,
a support system, um, because when you do hit that, at one point you everybody says have your dream job list of the 5 places you really want to work, and unfortunately in today's market I don't think that's going to happen if you really just want to get your
no.
feet in the
No,
door.
definitely not.
So by the time you hit, oh, I've applied to 150 places and I've gotten 90 rejections. Well, just hold out a little longer, because you never know. You still have a few open ones you haven't heard back from. But it's a lot harder when you're doing it on your own. You got to have somebody you can lean on and vent to. Where it's like, man, you, you start struggling. You really do after a while. But it's just the
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that's the
definitely.
industry right now. It's so weird. My sister's in product development, and she sees it all the time. She's like, "Man, a old colleague of hers left, and then at their new company they got laid off, and they're having the same problem." And she's like, "You apply to 20 places and find out they're just window
Yeah.
shopping. No, they're not really hiring. They just want to see who they can pull in for a resume."
Yeah, I've suspected this sometimes that perhaps a few companies out there they're not actually recruiting. They're advertising a position, but it's probably already been given internally, but they want to get the KPIs of like all this entry level stuff, but saying you need years of experience, which is contrary to entry level. I think it's more a case of, hey, let's see how many people we can get, and we can say, hey, our company is really popular, people like it. And I think, well, actually, it's maybe some people do, but a lot of people out there maybe are becoming, I don't want to say the word desperate, but sort of really longing for that chance. I mean, now quite a lot of the jobs I see entry level, but they want years of experience. So it's like, okay, we'll pay entry level wage, but we will want you to be the equivalent of a senior UX designer. And I'm thinking it just can't and shouldn't happen like that. However, as you said, Zach, on LinkedIn, I see more and more people being laid off. So it could be that the people with the senior positions actually will settle for less of a wage just because they need a job like everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think
And I think it's a
Well, I think they're
dangerous
trying to
trend.
correct a salary bubble that happened to take place when they needed UX designers. And people still do, but then I don't know, you see mass layoffs in design departments, and then in 2 years from now, you're going to see a struggle to get designers in there. And they should have just
Yeah,
kept
definitely.
them
I
on
think
in
it
the first place.
Exactly. I remember about, I think, 5 or 10 years ago, the recruitment industry really exploded and people were jumping on that bandwagon, and recruitment was the sort of hot potato. Whereas now, I think that well has dried up, that recruitment is really hard to get into and to develop. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's just from the few things I've seen. I won't say that's gospel, but I think it's always the case with any industry that it gets hot for a while, it snowballs, and then it goes downhill, or there's a slump for a while, I think.
For me, when it comes to handling rejection in this process or keeping your head high while trying to get to that paycheck, and I'd be more than happy to cover this further in another video, another episode. For me, it's the key is trying to find your purpose, your meaning, what makes you feel fulfilled, and trying to participate in those activities while you are doing your job search. Very few people, well, no, there are so many people who go to work just to collect a paycheck. I don't think that's the three of us here.
Yeah,
Um, as you've
nope,
heard,
not at all.
Zach will get home and do more work instead of watching Netflix. That's what gives him his fulfillment. For me, as I mentioned earlier, I've realized how much I want to do work that benefits the job changer community. I want to spend my career decreasing the job dissatisfaction rate. Um, like I know what it's like to dread Monday mornings. I don't think anyone should have to live like that.
Oh
And
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of people
definitely. To
do.
dread Monday mornings and look forward to Friday afternoons. Yeah, definitely.
And just, I would love to spend my career helping people move away from that. And so, what I am doing on the side during my job search is just meeting with people who are in boot camps, or posting content on LinkedIn, or posting content on my YouTube. Just to, this makes me feel good and fulfilled that I'm helping people in this community that I want to work for while doing my job search. So, I'm still able to hold my head high. Of course, I still need to work any job to make a paycheck. I'm a server at a sushi restaurant right now, and it helps put a roof over my head. It is not what I want to be doing for my
Hmm.
career, but I know that I am doing what I want to do on the side. And that's something I never found with my previous career aspirations. And so I think I'm truly in the right place now, and it helps keep me patient and positive that I'm able to do what makes me feel fulfilled. And so I think as long as you're able to find that thing for yourself, then you'll be okay. You'll be able to keep the patience and the positivity. There will certainly be days where those things slip and you feel sad, or maybe you just have to read books or play video games or watch TV for a week or two, take a break, and that's okay. But as long as you
Yeah,
have those things that keep you
yeah,
fulfilled, you'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to cover this
yeah.
subject because I had a whole system for keeping myself sane, and even that at one point started to break down because any system that's tested and tested and tested
Yeah,
will eventually give. But no, it's
yeah,
if I
exactly.
understand correctly, I think that's what William the uh, your volunteer project was.
Yeah,
They're a support system or some kind of system to help job searchers not lose their brain,
yeah,
for lack of a
absolutely.
better term. So.
Yeah, yeah. Always establish a support system, and of course, always look after your mental and physical well-being because they go hand in hand. But one thing I'll also say, because I do have a interview tomorrow, actually, which is probably my first out of perhaps, I don't know. Well, I say first, I should say the only one thus far out of about 50 applications I've made within the last 3 weeks or so. And I will just say that, like for me, even if I don't make it through to past the interview stage, um, I will take a huge positive out of it because it means that my portfolio or resume is actually quite decent, at least, if
Mhm.
not good. because obviously a company has recognized and I've obviously been forwarded for the next round or shortlisted. So I would say if you, for every 20, 30 job rejections, even if you don't hear back from someone who conducts an interview with you, take it as a positive and think about a ratio of one interview is much more powerful in a positive way than say 20 or 30 uh, standard rejections. So always appreciate those little things and use them to give yourself the confidence that it's not you that's necessarily underqualified or that you're not good enough. It's not about that. It's more about either, as we said, which is something we will talk about in another episode in detail. But just to underpin how important it is to have the social support system or any mental health and well-being support system is always just enjoy the small positives because there will be more negatives than positives, particularly in the job search, but it's not going to be all negative. But also um, don't beat yourselves up for feeling down or thinking that you're not good enough. Don't kind of deny it. Just work through it and just keep telling yourself that you do have the skills. And actually, one thing we want to do with this podcast is in different episodes we want to have guest speakers to join us because not just people who have graduated from the same boot camp as what the three of us have, but we want to get people uh, out there because the three of us, know lots of very, very talented colleagues. And as I've said in to the odd person, I don't like to say connections because it sounds so clinical. So that's why I say colleagues. But we want to also feature people who are, especially those who are looking for work, not just, but especially those who are looking for work, who can talk about their talents and their skills and their experience. And as Will said, to remedy the job dissatisfaction or at least as well as the recruitment process to make it a better experience and fairer for everyone. All right, cool. Yeah, so I think for us, I mean, especially for Zach and I, it is getting pretty
Yeah.
late here. So we are going to wrap up this episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope that all of you listening have not just enjoyed it, but perhaps gained something from it. Again, please feel free to reach out to all of us on LinkedIn. I'm Cross Preston. We've got Zach Oleski and who's the other dude?
William Carson.
No, no, we've got William. William Carson. Yeah, no, I actually did know. I did remember your name. Uh, but yeah, please reach out to us. Stay tuned because we will have this as a regular episode or episodic series. So I think every Sunday, but we may also do special episodes. And if you guys are really keen, we may even be able to stretch it to 2 episodes a week. But please don't fret; they're not all going to be an hour and 20 minutes long. So please do bear with us. But we hope you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, this episode, as we have doing it. And we all really look forward to any of your comments. We will post the links about any what's upcoming in the next episodes. We will post that on LinkedIn. We may even create a page for it. But we will be sure to inform you of any web page or any new pages on LinkedIn that we will do to accommodate this podcast. But yes, thank you all very much for tuning in. And we really look forward to doing more podcasts and helping you to understand and break into the UX and UI industries. So, from me, I'd like to say thank you again and have a good day or good night wherever you are. And please tune in again for the next episode.